Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about list comprehension. In order to understand how list comprehensions work, we need to talk about and define iterable. An iterable in Python is any object that can return one component at a time. So we've actually seen some examples of these before. Lists are iterable. If you iterate over a list, you get back each individual item. Same thing with a tuple. If you iterate over a string, then you get back each individual character. And if you iterate over a dictionary, then you get back the keys, the values, or both, depending on what method you choose to use. This should sound familiar. This was back in Newbie byte number 13. So here's a simple example. We have friends, which is a list of strings. So in the for loop, friends with an S is the iterable. We use the for loop to loop over or to iterate over the list, and then we assign a variable that represents each individual item. So the first time through the loop, friend is Bob. The second time through the loop, friend is Julian. The third time through the loop, friend is Sherry, then Eric, then AJ, and then Heather, and we print out each individual friend. So when we run this, we see Bob is my friend, Julian is my friend, so on and so on and so on. Now, we're going to change this slightly because in this example, we're just printing out the items as part of a formatted string. Sometimes you actually want to start with the list, modify the items, and then store it somewhere else. We have the same list of friends. Then we've created a new list that's empty, and we call that lowercase friends. Some people use the word initialize in this case. So we would say that we initialize a new list. Then we're going to loop over friends. So this becomes our iterable in our loop. Inside the parentheses over here, we're taking each individual friend, we're making it lowercase, and then we are appending it to the lowercase friends list. So when we print out the lowercase friends, you can see we have all of the original friends' names, but now they've been lowercased. You can also add a condition if you want. When we say adding a condition, we just mean that we're going to use an if statement that's going to determine which of the friends will be included in this particular case. In general, it'll be which items are included in the new list. So here our condition is if the length of the friend is greater than 3, then we do the append friend.lower. And so when we run that, you'll see right here, we have Julian, Sherry, Eric, and Heather, because those are the 4 friends who have a name that is at least 4 letters long. Sorry, Bob and AJ, you don't make the cut this time. This is a really common pattern that you'll see throughout Python. You'll initialize a new list. That's what we just saw. You'll loop over the original list. You'll add a condition if you need to. This is optional. You don't always have a condition. Then you will manipulate it if you need to as well. And finally, you append the item that you have manipulated or filtered out to the new list. Now, there is another way to do this in Python, and that is called list comprehensions. So take a moment. I would even encourage you to pause the video here and just read through these and see what you can find in common. You'll notice that this is what we just looked at. Down here, this is what's called the list comprehension. Here we use the same label, lowercase friends, but the list comprehension is defined all in a single line of code. It's inside of the square brackets, but you'll notice that the for loop down here is exactly the same for loop as in the original. It's just we don't have the colon at the end. Then the thing that we want to append in a list comprehension actually goes first. So I'm trying to add the friend.lower to my new list that I'm calling lowercase friends. And inside of a list comprehension, you don't actually have to use the append method. It's what's called implicitly added. So you can also do this. Let me zoom out just a little bit here. You can also do this with a conditional. It's just that when you use a list comprehension, the conditional goes at the end. So here you have the friend.lower for friend and friends, and then if the length of friends is greater than 3, and you'll see that this gets us back to the same exact code that we had earlier. The general syntax for this is you need to write an expression. This expression is going to modify each individual item. So in the examples we just saw, the expression was friend.lower. Then you have the item variable. So you can see that would come right here in our for loop. And the item needs to be used inside of the expression. So this is kind of backwards from what we normally see. We are assigning the label here, but we're using it in an expression already. So this can be a really tricky point in list comprehensions. Then we use whatever iterable we want. This can be a string, it can be a list, it can be a dictionary, and then finally, this is optional. If you have a condition, it goes at the end. I really like to use this idea of a sentence frame. I want blank for each blank in blank if blank. This will make a little bit more sense once we see an example here. Using that sentence frame in our lowercase friends example, the sentence frame becomes, I want the friend lowercase for each friend in the friends list. Here, this is the thing that I want. I want the friend lowercase, so I write friend.lower, and then I write my for loop for each friend in the friends list. Sometimes you don't necessarily want to modify the object. Maybe you only want to use it as a filter. So here, we're not going to add the lowercase version of the friend. We're going to add the friend itself. My sentence frame now becomes, I want the friend for each friend in the friends list if the friend has at least 4 letters. So notice I'm no longer lowercasing them. I'm just putting the same exact item, friend for friend, in the friends list. And then our conditional goes at the end. And if we run this code, you'll see we get Julian, Sherry, Eric, and Heather. We saw how it worked with strings, but there's nothing special about a list full of strings. You can also use a list full of integers or whatever object you want. So here's the original recipe. We have the numbers list. We initialize a new list called squares. We use a for loop, and then we append what we want. We want the number squared, and when we print this out, we get each of the original numbers squared. Here's the same code using the sentence frame and as a list comprehension. I want the number squared for each number in the numbers list. Here's my expression where I square the number, and then I have my item variable in my iterable. And you'll see I get the same exact output. Here we need to explain one more item, and that is the modulo operator. The modulo operator is the percent symbol. It does division, but instead of giving you the answer to the division problem, it gives you the remainder. So here, we're going to square the numbers just like we did before, but we're going to filter out all of the numbers that are odd. So if we divide a number by 2, and we get a remainder of 0, that means that the number is even. And so you can see here, I've squared the numbers and I've filtered out all of the numbers that were odd initially. So 1 is odd, it's no longer in the list. It jumps straight to number 2. 2 squared is 4. It skips 3 because it doesn't meet the condition. And then we go to 4, squared 4, we get 16. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped make a little bit of sense about list comprehensions, and good luck on today's bite.